All right, hi. This is class 2 of the week that I've started to do. So this is the first time I've done this one, and it's all about stretching. A little bit of dynamic stretching, so stretching through movement, a little bit of static stretching, stretching whilst being still, those kinds of things. And one of the main reasons why I decided to do this one is because as part of all of the classes that I teach, through spin, through American football, through circuits, and etc., etc., one of the things I'm always asked is why I don't do an extensive stretch towards the ends of classes. And generally the reason why is because unless you're stretching on a regular basis, 2, 3 good times a day, all over the week, 3, 4, 5 times, it's not really that effective just doing a quick 2 minutes, 3 minutes after a class and those kinds of things. So one of the things I'm looking to do whilst, you know, obviously doing these live streams during this wonderful time of Corona breakdown, is to build up kind of a library of different stretching routines, different stretching classes, those kinds of things. So in the future, when the madness is finished, I can point people to, like, oh, look at this extensive diary of kind of stretching and those kinds of things. Get on those regularly throughout the week and those kinds of things. So this is obviously live right now. Anybody who turns up, hooray, thumbs up for you. Sunday morning, 9 o'clock, you animal. And that's great. But then after this, it'll also be uploaded to my YouTube channel, so that it'll be there kind of for the whole time. So for this one, we don't need anything at all. Okay, we just need the body, we need a floor, we need a bit of a space, and those kinds of things. If you've got the old yoga mat, which everybody seems to have these days, and you want a little bit of extra cushioning underneath you because your carpet's not fluffy enough, then throw that down. If you want to put the blankets down, you know, whatever it needs to be comfort, that's it. So what we're going to do over the next, 25 minutes or so is just go through a few stretches. We're going to start with some mobility into those stretches, so some kind of like dynamic movements into them. Then we're going to stop and hold them, and then move forward from there. Now, today's stretch is going to primarily focus on lower body. So from the highest up the body we're probably going to get today is our obliques, so our kind of our core area, but we're going to spend a lot of time in and around the legs, the calves, the hamstrings, the quads, those kinds of things, the glutes as well. I would almost go as far as to say runner centric. Now this is probably going to be the closest to what I do probably twice a day today. And it's going to go through my favourite stretches, and we're going to hold them probably for a little bit longer than you're aware of, and those kinds of things. Get into and get out of them from there. Now, for the majority of people, you are going to find each one of these stretches hit you in a kind of different way. If you're like me, and you'll see through some of the demonstrations, I have horrendous kind of range of motion. So some of the stretching I look When I'm doing them, you'll see that I look nothing like you. You can probably touch your toes. You can probably do this, that, and the other. So the biggest advice for each one is just to push it as far as you can take it. Mild discomfort is as much as we want. Anything more than that, we want to stay away from. Also, when we're stretching, the one key thing I want you to think about is where you feel the stretch, okay? We shouldn't be feeling the stretch in any kind of joints. So if you're feeling it in knee areas, in and around the whole knee area, in and around ankles as well, we want to keep that away from there. We want it's in the muscular areas is where we should be feeling it. So if you feel it into your knees, ankles, those kinds of things, make sure that we take it away and kind of reset it so we feel it on the muscles themselves. Okay, so apart from that, hooray, let's get going, shall we? So, first thing I want you to do is we're just going to sit back and feet flat on the floor, both toes and knees facing forward, and we're just going to lie on back. And as we do, we're just going to windscreen wiper our legs from side to side, okay? So we're on our backs, and we're just windscreen wipering from side to side. Holding it at each side, maybe 2 to 3 seconds. Okay, nice and slow through the movement. So the feet position isn't changing. And we're trying as much as you can to try and keep your lumbar, your lower back on the floor, and maybe even your glutes, your bum cheeks as well. Okay, so we got a nice little bit of movement going on. So we're just swinging from side to side. So that the next time round, I want you to hold it over to one side as much as you can. And we're just going to hold it there. Once again, we're trying to keep the lumbar, trying to keep your glutes on the floor as much as you can. And that might look like here, knees up quite tall. That might look knees all the way on the floor, but with obviously the glute on the floor there. It's really whatever your range of motion is for all of these. And then we're going to once again up with the knees all the way over to the other side and just hold them there as well. So keep that core engaged. Keep a nice bit of stability going on with the body. And keep just pushing those legs on over. Okay, good. What we're going to look to do next then is we're still sitting in our position, and what I want you to do this time is we're lying down still. So we've been going from side to side. This time we're going to bring the knees on up, and we're just going to give them a good old hug into the body, okay? Hugging them in and then releasing, okay? So we've got a little bit of movement to start with. So with the majority of the stretches at the beginning, we just got this little bit of movement, this bit of dynamic movement to get a little bit of blood flowing there, to feel where our range of motion is, those kinds of things. So we're kind of introducing each stretch to the body, to ourselves, especially if we've never done them before. So you'll feel a little bit of movement in your pelvis here, and there's a little bit of tilt going on, especially as you hug it up towards the chest. And you'll also feel, depending on once again how tight you are, maybe a little bit of a pull in the lumbar, maybe a little bit of a pull tops of your legs, that kind of thing. Okay, and then the next time we're going to bring it up and we're just going to hug them in, and we're just going to hold them there. However you want to hold is fine. If you want to go elbow to hug it all in, if we've just got the hands on the knees or on the shins, but we're just looking to squash those knees in to the chest as much as we can from there. It's all about the breathing as well. You can get your body to accept stretching a little bit more with good controlled breathing. Specifically, it's the exhale of the breath that you want to be using to take a stretch a little bit further. So anytime you find yourself in a stretch and you think, oh, I could go a little bit further perhaps, it's always best to take a nice big breath in, deep breath in, and then on the exhale, as you're breathing on out, squeeze it in a little bit further as well. Lovely. Okay, so keeping our legs up then, what we're going to do now is we're just going to repeat that windscreen wiper that we were doing before, but this time we're going to keep those legs off the floor. Okay, so I always like to kind of sturdy my upper body because I want to keep my shoulder blades on the mat as much as possible. So I like to bring my arms out in almost like a T position, and then we're going to wipe a blade all the way over to one side and then all the way over again. All the way over before and all the way over again. So it's a nice slow process. What I would say concentrate on here is concentrate on keeping those shoulders on the floor, okay? So don't worry about your range of motion with your legs, how far you can get over either side. Just really concentrate on fighting to keep those shoulders on the floor as we get a slight little rotation in. And once again, it doesn't matter if we get just here, if we get all the way over to the side. It's just this nice little bit of mobility and movement. And then on the next time round, we're going to keep our legs over onto that one side that we've stopped on. So you can slightly adjust it if you want to. Try and keep your your thighs and your core at like a right angle. So you can look at that now, make a slight adjustment with your legs. Depending on, once again, depending on where you're tightest, will really depend on how much and where you feel this stretch. For example, on one side when I do this stretch, I feel it quite heavily in my glute. And on the other side, I feel it a little bit more in my hip flexor. So there's always going to be imbalances in the body. We've always got dominant sides and those kinds of things that do more work. So we're going to find different tightnesses on each leg, specifically when we repeat, from one side to another. Brilliant. All right, so we do have comments obviously going on. So if you've got any questions, please pop them in there. I'm happy to answer them if I know the answer. So let's all core up and over to the other side as well. So Kate says, do you do these before or after a workout? Great question. So we're over to the other side now, and once again we're letting gravity put the stretch on for us there. We're just keeping those shoulder blades on the floor as best we can and just being super lazy and letting gravity do the work there. So in regards to stretching, there's a lot of papers out there with a lot of really, really good information. And what I take from them is that static stretching, so what are we doing right now by just letting the legs just sit there in a period of time, static stretching actually impedes sports performance. So we'll talk about any kind of activity, whether you're in a spin class, a circuits class, competing at a high level of sports, whatever. I just call it sports performance. So anytime you do anything like that, static stretching can actually impede your explosiveness and your ability to really kind of fire through the muscle sets that you're static stretching. So we'll bring the legs back up to the middle. And now what I'm going to ask you to do, we'll come back to that point in a minute, is you're just going to take either side, whichever side you want to start on, one leg and just cross it on over the other one. And then whichever one is over the top, you're going to let that one fall to the floor. So all we've done is we've just taken that same stretch, just taken a little bit deeper. We may be able to feel it a bit more on the outsides of our legs again. Once again, it's just gravity doing the work and shoulder blades on the floor. So static stretching is seen as kind of impeding that explosive work and sports performance. So dynamic stretching is what you want to be doing pre-classes. Specifically with warm-ups, the best thing to generally do with any kind of warm-up when you're using dynamic movements, that kind of thing, to get the body ready, is to repeat processes you're going to do during that performance. So if you're running, for example, if you've got, let's say, a 100-meter sprint, when you see them warming up at the beginning, there's lots of high knees, firing those knees up nice and fast through the movement. It's helping the body remember and bring forward kind of the programming that it's got for those movements. So anytime you are warming up pre-sport performance, pre-sport class, those are the best things to do. Repeat processes that you're going to do for that class. And back to the middle. And then we're just going to cross the legs the opposite way and then let gravity take its toll again, taking it down the other side. So yeah, dynamic movements beforehand, static afterwards is generally the best thing. But like I said at the beginning, it's my view that unless you're doing stretching very, very regularly, 5 minutes at the end of a class, 5 minutes at the end of a training session once or twice a week is irrelevant. It's not going to do a lot of help in regards to strengthening, changing your range of motion, accepting and changing your body's comfort with certain areas of movement and those kinds of things. So it's really kind of something you've got to commit to. And certainly, as you can see with this class, a lot of it is just me lying around doing not a lot. So you can sit there whilst watching Game of Thrones or The Wire or anything like that, and just throw yourself in these positions on the floor rather than working on that bomb print in the sofa. All right, so we're going to bring ourselves back up to the middle. Again. And we're going to uncross the legs. And if you can, we're just going to do a little bit of rocking forward and back. Okay. Just kind of almost massaging the spine. Okay. Maybe you even go as far as to come all the way up on your shoulder blades. But it's just a nice roll through the spine from there. Okay. And we're back up to a nice, beautiful seated position. Okay, so what we're looking to do next is we're going to put our feet together. Okay, so the soles of your feet, but perfectly up to yourself where you do it here. So bog standard butterfly stretch. So if you want to bring your feet all the way further forward or close up to your bum, it's entirely up to you. Whichever position you choose, what I want you to do is I want you to be able to, without holding on anywhere, is just to be able to sit up properly. Sit up nice and straight, okay? So whether that's feet further away from the body where you can sit up straight, or if you're lucky enough to have wonderful mobility in your hips, you might be able to really bring your heels in and sit up. As you can see, when I bring my heels in, I'm falling backwards already. My knees are in a V shape, those kinds of things. So anyway, we're sat up, we're in a nice comfortable position, and what we're looking to do first and foremost is just put a little bit of weight on our knees, okay? So I'm using my hands on my shins just for a little bit of extra kind of oomph into my legs, and we're just sitting up, good body posture, and just pushing those legs down, okay, opening up. So one of the things I like to talk about a lot in all of my classes is to do with posture. So in regards to our upper body in this position is a good time to talk about that posture. So think about putting your shoulder blades into your back pockets. So you're driving them down and away, down into those back pockets. From there, chest is pushing up. And really we should be feeling all kinds of like stretching going on in our kind of our hip areas here. Pushing them down. And then what I want you to do is I just want you to put a couple of fingers in your big toes, okay? And the reason for this is because there's not a lot of kind of oomph behind this pull when we do it, because we only want a little bit of pull through this rather than that whole foot where we can really drive ourselves forward. So we've given ourselves a little bit of a push down on the legs. The body's opened up, those hips have opened up just a little bit. So just a little bit of a grab on those toes, couple of fingers on the toes, and keeping that good upper body posture, we're just going to bring ourselves forward just the tiniest of bits. Keep the outsides of those feet on the floor, and we're just really kind of a little bit coming forward. That's it. Once again, so just remember about that breathing. So if you find yourself, you get to a position and it's tough, it's just a slight breath in, and then on the exhale, you're pushing through that little bit more. Don't compromise that upper body position. Keep those shoulders back and down and driving forward. Okay, so and we're up. Just going to cross our legs. Either way is fine because we're going to repeat the process in a moment. And what we're going to look to do is just bring ourselves down to the mat. Okay, so once again, this depends on where you're mobile. If you're mobile in the hips, lower back, hamstring, glutes, all these different things are going to play into how far through into this stretch you can get. I can get to my elbows if I'm lucky. I've had people in classes before who can get their head to the floor. So wherever it sits fit with you today, you're sat in that seated position, and we're just going to bring our hands down first, folding on over at the hip, If you're comfortable there, then we can start trying to get our elbows onto the floor. And if you're super flexible and you're all opened up, you can take yourself all the way over flat onto that floor. Once again, it's those deep breaths. Think about those deep breaths in, and on the exhale, just a little bit more movement through to bring yourself a little bit deeper into the stretch. Try and keep your shoulders away from your ears. So try not to bring kind of like forcing it up like this or anything like that. Try and keep a nice relaxed shoulder situation through this movement, so we're not going, we're not scrunching up the neck or anything like that. Once again, depending on how tight you are and where you are, this is a great one, especially in the upper leg area, to find where you are tight. So I can see right now, or feel right now, being in this position, that my left hip and my left glute is incredibly engaged right now. So taking that thought and what that feeling is, we're up, we're going to cross the legs the opposite way, go into the same stretch again. If I'm feeling exactly the same intensity or close to it this side, I know it's both my glutes and it's a good stretch. If I'm not feeling it so much on one side, it can show that I've got an imbalance and one side is slightly tighter than the other and may need a little bit of extra work to release what's going on there to help with that range of motion. So yeah, so I'm down again in this different position. The intensity that I'm feeling in that right side now, on that right glute, there's literally nothing. So to me, that points out the lot more tightness in that left side, which would need a little bit extra stretching to help there. So once again, we're pushing, while our legs are crossed and we're pushing ourselves forward, folding at the hip as much as we can before we curl on over. If we can get those hands to the floor, great. If those elbows come down next, great. If you can take it a step further, head down, then great. But we're holding it there. Big deep breaths in, exhales. Lovely stuff. Okay, so we got a couple more to go through today. Next one is one I've only really started using in the last couple of weeks, and it's quite a nice, easy, simple one. So we're still in that kind of cross leg position, and all you're going to do is, let's start with our right foot, shall we say. So our left knee is going to stay folded as if we were in that cross-legged position. You just take that right foot now and place it over the knee. Okay, so we're crisscrossing ourselves up. So left leg's down on the mat or on the floor, right foot, we're going to try and take over the top here. Okay, now what we're looking to do is hug the knee that's upright. Okay, so a nice big hug into it as much as you can, okay, from this position. All right, so if we're right here and we're hugging that knee to us and our posture's up and everything like that, you may be all ready to start to feel the stretch just down here, okay? If we're not feeling it at the moment, or we'd like to put it a little bit more intense, one of the things you want to try and do is work that glute, that bum cheek back to the floor, okay? So in my comfort position where I'm all up like this, right now, there's about an inch gap between my butt and the floor. And just by forcing that cheek back down to the floor, I'm putting the stretch on. So once again, relatively little effort on my behalf. Like with a lot of these movements today, relatively little effort, okay? All I'm doing is put myself in a certain position, and because of the tightness involved in my body, just by pushing into those areas of gaps and things like that, puts the stretch on a little bit more. So it just looks like I'm just sat here watching a scary movie, a little bit scared, all curled up from there. But getting a great stretch on the glute. And this is the one, as I mentioned in the last stretch, where I know I've got that extra tightness in that left side. This is one of the ones that I've started doing quite a lot, especially on that left side, because of how deep and how easy it is to push on and push the stretch through. And so as we're stretching one leg, we're obviously going to go around and do the other leg as well. So just unravel. Going to go ahead and pop that right leg on the floor this time, but this time the left leg's going all the way over the top, and then we hug it in. So we're just supporting our posture, really. I mean, if we got on low hands and we got perfect posture and good body and everything like that, we would be able to do the stretch, but this is just a little safety belt. So now I'm just going to force that hip, that left leg onto the floor, that left glute, that butt cheek onto the floor, to really put the stretch on. And it's really important you don't let that knee disappear as it's coming on, okay? As you're pushing that cheek down, really keep that knee in your armpit as you're pushing and sitting on down to that area right here. So the other thing about stretching, and the paper suggests, and the great thing about fitness is that you're always guaranteed, if you read one wonderful article about something and one wonderful study about something, there's one or two others which contradict everything in it. So it's always take stuff for a pinch of salt, whatever you read it, and find what works for you within the fitness world. But anyway, one of the things that they suggest about static stretching and the work you do with static stretching in some studies is that it increases your body's acceptance of what it can do with itself. Okay, and what I mean by that is when you look at somebody who's fully conscious and they have certain ranges of motion, touching their toes is a great example of that. When that body is unconscious, when the brain is turned off, the range of motion that that body can do increases. So for example, myself, I can't touch the floor, can't touch my toes. However, if I was unconscious, let's say drunk or knocked out cold, something like that, the range of motion, I would be able to touch my toes quite easily. It's because the brain, the computer of the body, isn't there reading the signals and reducing that range of motion. So when we're stretching, all we're doing is making the body feel more and more comfortable with how far it can go into those senses that it's feeling. Okay, good. And out we come. So let's give our calves a little bit of attention. So all we're going to do is towards a downward dog kind of position, if you're aware of it. So, but we're not driving our shoulders back into it. So all I want you to do is just up onto the hands, and we're just going to roll up onto the toes. Just a little bit of movement in there first. So yeah, so when you're stretching, generally any kind of extra length that you feel you're getting is just your body's kind of interpretation of what it's happy with that range of motion. And generally that comfort disappears, that extra little bit of information, after about 30 minutes, an hour, something like that, which is why I say it's very important that you regularly do stretching, so you continue to remind the body of this different range of motion that it can put itself through. Okay, so on the next one down, we're just going to drive those heels to the floor. Okay, so right now it's a little bit more difficult than all the other stretches that we've done, just because we're going to have to use our core right now just to keep ourselves up a little bit, and we're just pushing those heels down towards the floor. So there's little calf muscles right behind us. Don't like a lot of work on them. They start screaming quite quickly. So let's start rocking back and forth again just to get a little bit of motion off them. And then what we're going to do on the next come down is just take one leg and pop it on over the other. And we're just going to hold that on that one calf, forcing that heel to the floor, keeping that leg as straight as you can, which is engaged with the calf muscle at the moment. And then off we come, back into that rocking situation. And then the same on the other leg as well. So your heel might be on the floor right now. It might be elevated, just like mine is. But you should feel the whole calf, that's the muscle behind the shin, fully engaged right now. Fully stretching on out. Lovely. Okay, and the last one, once again, it's a super lazy one. It's all to do with your foot. Especially runners, one of the biggest injuries that runners can get is plantar fasciitis. So we want to stretch our feet as well. So we've done a bit of glute work. We've done there is a little bit of obliques in there on some of the things we've done. A little bit of glute work. There's a little bit of hams, you know, depending on where you're tight, all those kinds of things. We've got the calves in. Stretch the foot slightly. So all I want you to do is stack your toes straight on top and sit. That's it. Okay? And if you've never stretched your feet before, okay, if you've never stretched your feet before, this can be incredibly painful, okay, so short bouts of it. Like I say, like with anything that you do which brings intensity to the body, especially for the first kind of, 6 months, a year's worth of doing a new activity, one of the things you're doing more than kind of physical changing is the mental side of things. So we have to become aware of the pain, we have to become aware of the feelings and the sensations which different movements provide the body. So this is a great example of that, because if you've never sat on your feet like this since you were, 5 years old, there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of signals going to your brain, and it doesn't like it at all. So even if you're on for 5 seconds, take it off and then put it back on for 5 seconds and those kinds of things. But it's a real good stretch on the feet, good posture over the top. From there as well. Lovely stuff. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming along. As always, I'm assuming if you haven't already, you are liked on the page. Give the video a like, give the page a like, give it a share, those kinds of things. That'd be really great if I can get the word out a little bit more. If you've got any questions, then you can put it in the comments or DM me, and the video will be up on YouTube with the balance classes that I do as well, and any future bits and bobs as well. So thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful day in the insane world of lockdown, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh, high fives.